It's a game that brings back warm, fuzzy memories to yours truly because almost 2 years ago to the day, around Easter time, Villa hosted Newcastle, and I was so fortunate to be there because we turned in one of our best displays under Unai Emery to that point, not dissimilar to what we saw this past Saturday when Aston Villa made a very good and in-form Newcastle side look ordinary. Presented by 24/7 Services, let's count down the 3 key issues or moments that defined Villa 4. I said Villa 4, Newcastle 1. Welcome inside the parlor in Delta, British Columbia, Canada, and happy Easter for crying out loud. I just don't know how weekends can possibly get better than this. Beautiful sunshine, night out. On Friday at my buddy Steve's, he pushed the boat out on these steaks. Look away, vegans. Then Villa runs riot on Saturday morning, and in just a little while, I'll be in my kitchen cooking Sunday Easter dinner with a smile on my face. Is there anything better than ham and chocolate? Well, no, actually, here's how it gets better. You're there in person, watching it live. Maybe for your first ever time, and that's exactly what happened to Columbus, Ohio Lions Club member Connor McBride, who brought his lovely Tina with him. His first ever pilgrimage to Villa Park. Had a cheeky pint beforehand down the road for good luck. Got to meet Tony Daly right on the park. You never forget your first time. So Connor McBride did have a better weekend than me, and I'm thrilled for him.
I get them, like the light blue.
I mean, like, he's safe in terms of percent, but I think it's safe.
Which I was tempted by.
Also grinning from ear to ear all weekend long was senior video correspondent Samir Gaby, who always puts a lot of thought and effort into his matchday wardrobe, this time opting for the prototype Henson Retro Track Top. You know, DivisionRetro.com is having a special sale in advance of the FA Cup semi-final. 25% off all merchandise, including the shirt I'm wearing in this show. I've put a link in the description of this video. And while we're on the subject of shopping, Saturday saw the debut of Villa's new downtown store at the Bullring, which is a big deal for the club's profile in the city. They are planting their flag. And you know, 2 years ago, I remember vividly, everyone was very reluctant to predict a Villa victory. But just like that 2023 encounter, it was clear almost from the off, almost from the pregame warm-up, that Villa was switched on and prepared. Highlighting the key numbers, we actually had less possession than the visitors, but still managed to have a dominant outing in shots and big chance creation. Passing stats, dead even within 20 yards, but the long ball was very effective, and our Emi Martinez played 11 of those successfully over 20 yards. This game was going to be won or lost based on duels, particularly in the middle of the park, and Villa dominated on the tackles, won 15-6 in total. We also had 6 interceptions to Newcastle's 3. One of those big chances missed fell to Marco Asensio. And am I the only one who's a little bit nervous that after such a torrid start to his goal-scoring exploits at Villa, Asensio misses 2 penalties at Southampton, the breakaway against PSG, and then this absolute sitter set up by Ian Maatsen. I mean, it's incredible how athletes in sports sometimes can go from red hot to ice cold in such a short period of time. The saving grace, though, is that he's actually getting those chances. If he wasn't getting the chances, there'd be real concern. I don't want to keep mentioning Yuri Tielemans being total class because I'm going to bore you to death talking all the time about how he keeps us in possession possession, how he creates chances, 3 of them on Saturday, one of them a big one, how he's winning tackles 5 out of 5, 6 recoveries. He went 11 for 16 on his duels. And 3 out of 4 of those were aerial duels. Another assist, too, by the way. That's 3 Premier League games in a row. You're just going to get bored of me talking about how influential Youri Tielemans was in a game that was probably going to be decided in the midfield. Boring. What I think makes the Magpies unique is their midfield trio. And I think they've taken a step from last year simply because they've had Sandro Tonali for most of this year. You remember he started by scoring on his debut just 6 minutes in against Villa, and then it went south for him. And all 3 of those midfielders are 6s, 8s, and 10s, all rolled into one. They can all score, they can all defend, track back, tackle, do everything, really. And you never know which one's going to release and create the overload because they all do it at different times, and that makes them very difficult to defend. Tonali doesn't look like a world-class athlete, but boy, does he have an engine to go along with the footballing brain, and we managed to keep him and the other 2 quiet. On that note, slightly annoying issue was how blessed Bruno Guimaraes was in not getting a yellow card sooner, because he committed 5 fouls on the afternoon, but a couple came in quick succession, and all he got was a ticking off from Jared Gillett, and that meant he had free license to go out and hack somebody down for the yellow card. Having Bruno and Joe Linton on yellow cards in this game changed how they were able to play. On the subject of our Australian referee, I always got the sense that Jared Gillett was trying to keep the play going, which I appreciate. Why that's not standardized amongst the rest of his colleagues is a question for another day, but that's why I was surprised that Gillett called this on Boubacar Kamara, because it was of the softish variety. And of course, that's the one that leads to Fabian Schär ultimately nodding home at the back post. And I know Ian Maatsen would probably be a little bit annoyed that he wasn't just that little bit tighter on the big Swiss defender, who, by the way, has now scored 3 goals into the Holt end net in just 2 visits. Only Virgil van Dijk has more Premier League goals by a central defender. Oh, central defenders scoring regularly. Wouldn't that be a nice luxury to have? And Schär had quite a battle going with Ollie Watkins, which included a coming together near the end of the first half. I immediately thought penalty, and so did Shay Given in the Shay Given derby. He thought it should be given, and if the referee had pointed to the spot, VAR would not have overturned it for having a clear and obvious error on the play. Schär goes across Ollie Watkins, and you are always taking a big chance when you do that. You're also tempting fate when you pull down your opponent as the last man, but I do agree with the match officials that Ollie Watkins probably was not going to get on the end of this, and maybe Nick Pope's starting position at the edge of the box saved his central defender from being dumped. What I really love about Aston Villa right now, and why I think we're going to get some neutrals on board, is that we're really easy to watch. I mean, you saw numerous occasions on Saturday where we made gorgeous combination type ball on the floor movement to get between the lines. I mean, we are getting through teams easily. But then when you score a beautiful goal at the end of it, there is just something so satisfying. And if we do have to go long, we could hurt you that way, especially when Ollie Watkins is as active as he was on Saturday. And then when we need some individual pace or flair, we have more than enough candidates. Like, how good would this goal have been had Morgan Rogers finished off the move, which ultimately then fell to Amadou Onana? I mean, Villa is like 24/7 services right now, coming at you with all sorts of tools, capabilities, tradespeople. Here's a strategy meeting featuring the famous Jason J and his team. They've been busy putting the finishing touches on that industrial complex in Hockley, adding a punch of color here and there. Maybe you need some flooring. Well, here's the crew installing some laminate at a new residential flat at Oxford University. These guys do it all. And then there's the roofing work, of course, using all kinds of different and new materials to suit the job and the budget. This particular restoration is at the Stamford Bridge Co-op, which is one of the company's many impressive clients. I mean, 24/7 services, really, they are like the Villa right now. Personnel, skills, options, strategies in offices all around the country. Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, not quite Newcastle yet. You could start your project with a free, fair quote. Get the numbers in the description of this video, or you'll find them on the company's website. No Eddie Howe, of course, as he continues to recover from pneumonia, which meant Jason Tyndall was solo on the touchline again. And I do wonder if over time that starts to have an effect. He did have some help in the form of a couple of analysts who were higher up in the stadium. I think one of them said to the other here, "Have you found the Holy Trinity show like?" Okay, let's see you do a Canadian accent then. It could have easily been a top 3 issue. How big was scoring 34 seconds into this game? And was Yuri Tielemans trying to pick out Marco Asensio? And Ollie Watkins just snipered in and said, "I'm scoring this goal." Not happy about sitting and watching the majority of the PSG game, feeling like, I helped us get this far, why am I not starting? Well, that was goal number 74 for Villa in the Premier League for Watkins, tied now with Gabby. And yes, it took a healthy deflection, but there's a cliche in sport. You make your own luck sometimes. Watkins' woodwork could have been a top 3 issue had the game not gone Villa's way, and this was an incredibly tricky angle to try a shot from, but he is 2 inches from bagging a brace and eclipsing Gabby's all-time Villa Premier League scoring record. In minute 28, he shudders the post again, and you just wonder, all these set pieces that aren't going in right now, if we're getting closer to a really big one going in for us, the odds would be in favor of that possibility. Big issue number 3, Maatsen Magnifique, which is Dutch for magnificent, which I'm sure you probably could have figured out on your own. But like many Villa players, including Ollie Watkins, not starting in the Champions League game on Tuesday probably stung a few players, especially one that was in last year's Champions League final. In fact, Ian Maatsen was pretty important in helping Dortmund get to that stage. As I said earlier, Maatsen would have been annoyed at not being just that little bit tighter on share for the 1-1 goal, but he more than made up for it in this game. And you know, the modern day fullback has to be one of the coolest and most fun positions on the park. I would tell kids, go do that, because you get to do a little bit of everything. And Ian Maatsen did a little bit of everything. He went 7 for 10 on ground duels won. He won 3 of 6 tackles, and he completed 82% of his passes. And that's on top of his attacking exploits. But it would be Maatsen's exploits in the 64th minute that would define his day and ultimately the game. And we saw Ian Maatsen's 2 biggest attributes, the afterburners and a sneaky good ability to finish. And it's funny, left-footed across goal, kind of like Malen's right-footed across goal. What is it with these Dutchmen? Because a lot of players are inverted now. They cut in to shoot. Ollie Watkins gets the assist when he felt the breeze brush by his left shoulder. He had to play the perfectly weighted ball for Maatsen to get on the end of it, which he did, and what a finish. To have a fullback who could do that is such a luxury. Big issue number 2, instant impact. Aye for JJ. Talking about Jacob Ramsey, of course. He was instrumental in this fixture 2 years ago. I remember him scoring that first half bomb. During this very good run by Villa, he has been crisp and sharp and tidy and quick. And just before he and Onana came on, Unai Emery said to them both, "We need a 3rd goal here. I don't trust this game right now." And Jacob Ramsey said, "Hold my beer, boss." Jacob Ramsey steps onto the park at 71 minutes and 50 seconds. At 72 minutes and 36 seconds, that's 46 seconds later, he delivers the crucial 3-1 goal via the poor and unsuspecting Dan Burn. Ollie Watkins played Ramsey the ball, but won't get an assist for that one. And I guess Ramsey just gets an assist in the end as well. And again, I found it very interesting where this ball was delivered from. Halfway down the penalty box, when so many players are inclined to get to the byline and hook it back. But he's picking out those passes into the danger area. And then barely over a minute later, JJ is instrumental in the 4-1 goal. in two different ways. I mean, first he finds Youri Tielemans with a pass, and then Tielemans plays in Rodgers. And again, I marvel at the move he makes at the end. And if he scores this goal, it's the goal of the week. And another one for Big Morgs. Credit to Nick Pope. He stood tall. But Newcastle was not out of the woods yet. After the initial scramble, Ramsey retrieves the ball, and it eventually finds its way to his fellow substitute, Amadou Onana, who guides it into the top corner. And you could tell by the celebration that this chap is as popular with his teammates as he is with the supporters. Onana is a highly intelligent and articulate human being, and I think he's captain material within the next couple of years. Obviously, that dusted the game. Scoreline still flattered the visitors. I was greedily hoping we could get one or two more to avenge the 5-1 there at the beginning of last season, and even the trip to St. James's Park this season. And the number one big issue that defined Villa 4, Newcastle 1, bouncing back. As much as us supporters took enormous pride in Villa beating PSG on Tuesday at home and coming from 2 goals down to do so in the game, not the tie overall, the club, the staff, and the players themselves did not feel that way. And that's because they failed in their objective, and they were that close. The objective was to get to the semi-final. You know, there will be a deep forensic analysis into why it happened and what ingredients the club will need to take that next step. And that is the demanding, ambitious culture that has been cultivated and why we all need to be so encouraged right now. The obvious question heading into this game, could Villa overcome the emotional letdown of Tuesday? And it really helps when you have a squad like we do. And for Unai Emery to be able to rotate in a very motivated Ollie Watkins along with Ian Maatsen, Tyrone Mings, and Marco Asensio, not to mention that those are fresh legs to complement the ever-presence like Youri Tielemans and Morgan Rodgers. What a luxury. Youri Tielemans has started every single Premier League and Champions League game this season. And I talk a lot about fatigue, but you know what? In some cases, these athletes actually adapt to the workload. Their bodies adjust along with their minds, and I think that's what's happened here with Tielemans. The attitude part is probably the most exciting to me because attitude is utterly essential in the group, and it just goes to show how far we've come just within this season alone. I mean, earlier this year, we did have letdowns in the league after a Champions League game, and to have such a big game so soon after Tuesday. I mean, this was a statement game. And to then keep the momentum going, that's 5 straight Premier League wins and 10 out of 11 in all competitions since the Crystal Palace loss. Now, I would argue that it's really hard to have that attitude without the squad depth. Villa did have a slight advantage by having 24 extra hours of rest heading into the game. Newcastle actually rolled out the same 11 for the 7th consecutive game, and you wonder if that did finally take its toll, but we just looked fresher from the beginning. And then when we had the game wrapped up relatively early, we were able to give rest to guys like Boubacar Kamara and Morgan Rodgers, which is essential considering only the next biggest game of our season is on Tuesday already. And none of this could happen. No Champions League quarterfinal, FA Cup semifinal, nowhere near the top 5 if we didn't have the greatest January transfer window in club history. Just quickly tabulating the subcategories as the record improves again at Fortress Villa Park. We've taken 2/3 of the available points at home now. Watkins scored, and it was the first goal. We are also improving the goal difference slowly but surely in the 15-minute increments, now at negative numbers in only 2 of those 6, including the final one, which has burned us a few times this year. Hopefully it won't on Tuesday. The Sill Hill Brewery star performer was difficult to choose, which is kind of a good thing, but it's got to go to Ollie Watkins with an assist to Unai Emery for his man management and rotation skills, because it lit a fire under number 11, who ended up delivering. Now, what an exciting week for Sill Hill Brewery. They've launched their newest offering, the Sill Hill Black Sabbath IPA, which has a hint of War Pig in it. No, it doesn't. I'm only kidding. But to help them launch the beer and unveil it this week was the band's original manager, Jim, shown here between Mark Gregory from the brewery and Chris Mason, general manager at the Brass House on Broad, which was a major haunt for Sandra and I on both our visits over, just for the full English breakfast alone. Now, remember, Saturday is the FA Cup semi-final. If you're not going to London, why not go to the Sill Hill Tap Room in Aston, because it's been a bit of a good luck charm, and they're offering the same beer for goals incentive just to thank the fans for supporting the brewery and the tap room itself. Maybe you could try the new Black Sabbath IPA. Next up, Manchester City, and would you look at the difference in squad value? And yet here we are, Villa just 1 point behind them. Now, I was at this game last year, and it gives me the feels, but for a different reason. Paul Handsaker of 24/7 Services and his dad Ron generously treated us to the experience in the Legends Lounge at the Etihad. And what I got from it was how lucky we are to have been chosen by Villa, a strategic club on the way up that plays in a traditional, gorgeous stadium and in a wonderful city. It was a bit of a whitewash, that game, and a throwaway it felt like, too. I mean, Callum Chambers and Robin Olsen started that game. What did you expect? Now, of course, we have so many options, and you just wonder if Jacob Ramsey and Marcus Rashford will start. This game somehow, to me, feels like it has Marcus Rashford written all over it. Now, it's never going to be easy, but it's not the same Manchester City without Rodri. In fact, they've had some serious injuries to their spine. No goalkeeper Ederson, Stones, Ake, Akanji, and Haaland up front. I mean, that's some significant players out, but they could still hurt you so many different ways. I think the only time we've ever won at the Etihad was for a League Cup game back in 2012. I think this is one of those ones you want to keep tight and tied at halftime and then hope you can pinch something later on. Villa has 15 points left on the table. Incredibly, we are 11 points behind last year's final point tally. We've won 5 in a row, and yet we're so far off last year. Just goes to show how good a year it was. But momentum is a powerful thing, and all you can do is control what's in front of you and keep putting the pressure on the Chelseas, the Forests, the Cities, and Newcastles. And it just feels like it was the perfect start to what could be one of the greatest weeks in the club's modern history. Until Tuesday, savor this feeling. Happy Easter, and of course, and as always, up the mighty Villa.